Hi, I'm Angela Pingle and I blog at Cut to Pieces, and today I wanted to show you some tips and tricks that I use when putting together the curved piecing blocks that I used in my book, Quilter's Mixology, available now from all your local bookstores. I want to show you how I do one pin piecing for curved pieces and how I sew them, press them, trim them, and then re-sew two blocks together to have a disappearing seam. You'll see what I can do. So I'm using pieces that I cut. I actually used an AccuQuilt cutter to cut them really quickly, and it does mark the center for me. If you are not using something that doesn't mark the center, you'll need to do that yourself, which is very easy to do. You can simply fold it in half and press it. So I'm going to put one pin right at the center, and then I'll show you how I do this at the machine. You want to make sure you have your 1/4-inch foot on your sewing machine, and then I'm going to line up my straight. I take it, I line up straight edge to straight edge, and the trick is to pretend like you are sewing a straight edge the whole time. So I'm going to put my needle down, and I am going to ease my two pieces together rather than pinning multiple times. And I'll be using a contrasting thread so you can really see what I'm doing once I pull it out. In this way I find that I'm able to go a bit faster. I'm going a little slower for you for demonstration purposes, and also because this is a pretty tight curve. So I go and I sew right to that pin, which is the middle, and I'm going to cut my thread. And I can remove my pin. As you can see, I have half of the block sewn with the right thread. I'm going to flip the block over and do the same thing from the other side. So I'm going to put straight edge to straight edge once again. Put that, line it up, use my little fingers to hold it together, drop my needle, and I'm going to sew, again, easing towards the middle. So I get those two edges lined up. Just a little tricky because of these small pieces. And I sew all the way to the middle. And the reason I really like to sew to the middle is because if I found that I didn't like how I sewed the first half, this is a chance I could always go back and recorrect it. You can see, because I can now sew the whole thing really quickly. So that's my technique for sewing. So I'll show you just one more time really quickly because I need to make two of these. So I take one pin right in the middle. I'm going to take, it doesn't matter which is on top, the outside curve or the inside curve, you're doing it both ways. I line up my two edges and I just ease them together. Gets a little tricky. Just always make sure what you have at the needle is a 1/4 inch. I cut it because I got to my pin, take it out, put my pin away, and again line up my two straight edges, drop my needle, get a few stitches in, and that's when I take it and I line up my other edges here, my raw edges. Ooh, and you can see, even for me it got tricky. I'm just gonna readjust. But no problem, hers are actually really forgiving because they're all on the bias. So it's actually not a big deal. That will press right out. So now I will show you how I press these. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I press my blocks. The Drunkard's Path blocks actually can always be pressed all in one direction. You can either always press toward the inside curve or you could press away from the inside curve. And you do not need to notch this or clip this. Nothing is required because of that tiny 1/4 inch seam allowance and that nice radius of the curve. So for our purposes, because we want to do this special seaming I'm going to show you in a second, we are going to press toward the inside curve. So you can see I just sort of start in the middle and really evenly press. I'm not pulling very much. I just want to put some heat on it. I'm going to flip it over and make sure I didn't catch anything, but it looks good. So same thing again, I'm going to take my piece and we need to press toward the inside because of how we're going to be trimming in our next step. And then I turn it over and I start again in the middle and sort of reach to the outside. And that's how I press. Angela here again. Now I'm going to show you how I trim these blocks square. We're going to do a special trimming so we can achieve disappearing seams when we put the two together, so we get one beautiful new shape. So what this requires, and I talk about this in my book as well, but this requires trimming just a 1/4 inch away from the seam of the inside curve. So and I'm not going to worry about squaring up my block too much. This one's pretty square, but part of this trimming will also square it up. But what I'm really focused on right now is I'm going to place my ruler so that it lines up right here. This is what you really want to pay attention to, that edge, this point right here where the blue is meeting the pink. And I want to set my ruler so that it's a 1/4 inch away, and then I line it up to be square. And I'm going to trim all that excess pink, and that becomes discarded fabric. We're not going to use it. I'm going to turn my block, and again I'm going to look for, this time right here, this point. I'm going to press my ruler down so that I'm a 1/4 inch away and trim away the excess pink. And if you want to, you could go through and square up your other sides of the blue. Mine don't look too bad. I'm not too worried about it for these purposes. So let me show you once again on this one. This one is a little more out of square. So you can see it got pulled a little bit more. It's probably that one I muffed up on the beginning when I was sewing. So, but you can see that it's still going to work beautifully. I can still get a really lovely 1/4 inch seam allowance away, and I'm going to trim up that pink. I'm going to turn it. This is also when it's really handy to have a rotating mat. You'll find that very handy if you're doing a whole bunch of these. So, and then again, I'm going to line up, look for that one point, 1/4 inch away, and I line it up straight, and I go ahead and trim all that excess pink away. And now we're going to go and sew the two together. So as you can see, I have two Drunkard's Path blocks 1/4 circle curves that have been trimmed to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the outside curve. That's what's really important for us with what we're doing today. I'm going to place them together. I want these pinks to line up. We're going to end up getting these blue curves to be together perfectly. So I'm going to put them right sides together, and I do go ahead and pin this. I like pins. Some people don't. I like them. It just gives me that extra little sense of confidence. So I'm going to do that. I just put a couple pins in for one this size. And you can see my white contrasting thread. So I'm going to go ahead and put this under using my 1/4 inch foot again. And I'm going to sew right along this. And here's going to be the interesting part. This is why we pressed our seam allowance for the curve away, because otherwise we would have 8 things we were trying to sew through right now, and instead we're not. So I'm going to go ahead and show you, keep going all the way, and cut that. And in a perfect world, let me get that out of your way. In a perfect world, these would be right on top of each other. But let's be honest, things are rarely perfect. So when I open it up, I get, that looks decent, you know, it's even on both sides, but I really want that pink to disappear altogether. It's going to depend on your look, depend on the pattern. So I'm going to be a little sneaky. You can see I kind of lost my 1/4 inch because I was butting up against all that. So I go in actually from the other end and I drop it down, and I want to get right on top of it. In fact, this is where usually we talk about a scant 1/4 inch. This is where we actually go a little bit the other way because we want to really get rid of that seam allowance. And you're not going to mess the curve up. You're not going to take very much away from that when you do it. So let's see how it turned out. And now you can see I really got that to disappear. And you want that 1/4 inch amount to be totally together, because if you sew to the next set of blocks, that's what you would have coming out. And I would just go through, because of the amount of seam allowances here, I would go through and I always press these open. And that's going to make it really easy and really nice and flat. And therefore you have 2 1/4 circle curves, and they came together with a perfect disappearing seam. So I hope you enjoyed my tutorial and you find it really helpful, and I hope you buy my book, Quilter's Mixology, and enjoy the patterns in that. Thank you so much.